Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to Eternal Journey, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and Pentawans. You are listening to Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi. This is episode 118 of the podcast where we are going to be talking about some more Cold Hunt Limited because it is super fun and people have been drafting the living daylights out of it, which may have something to do with the rewards, but may also just be the fact that Inscribe is a fantastic mechanic. Of course, joining me on the line as usual are my friends, starting off with John Holio. How are you, friend?
I'm fantastic. Good evening, gents.
Excellent. Across the internet from him is Alex the _. How you doing, friend?
Yo, doing well. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Really quick, want to give a shout out to some of the people who help keep the lights on here on the show and support the channel. Really do appreciate your ongoing support, friends. It means a lot to us. Want to give a shout out to IP Long No, Risper Visper, the John Holio, Dizzy Sick, Scarlet Harley, and Chastity Weaver. Thank you so much for the support, friends. We really do appreciate you. Well, gents, let's go ahead and get a warm-up going with our Pack 1 Pick 1 for the day. Cracking open this one, we have a couple of heavy hitters already. So let's see, we have Kasul Envoy. This is the 2/1 soldier for 1 green. Contract 2, 3 armor. Graviturgist is the 1/4 mage for 4 praxis. Flying endurance, and then contract 3, give Graviturgist +3 strength and charge this turn. Soul Feast is a fast spell for 4 shadow. Lifesteal, deal 3 damage to any target. Star-Kissed Wings is +2/+1 weapon for 5 justice, flying, and inscribe. Mature Avrax is a 2/2 dinosaur for 4 time, flying, and then +1 maximum power. And we have Calderon Captain, which is a 4/3 gunslinger for 5 fire. Revenge, your other units have +1 strength. Thundering Wing, meh, and T-Rex Screecher rounds out the commons, which is a 2/2 dinosaur for 3 primal. Flying, contract 3, deal 1 damage to an exhausted enemy unit. The uncommons, looking at Free Fire, which is a 4 Rockano fast spell to give a unit +1 strength, quick draw, and a lifesteal this turn with Windvoke Rockano. Caustic Rain is a spell for 4 blue. Inscribe, deal 2 damage to each unit and sight. And then finally, Stoke Ambition. Whatever. So yeah, Alex, what are you looking at in this pack, excluding Z-Rare?
Excluding the rare, it's between the Calderon Captain and the Free Fire for me. And as much as I love Windvoke, I think I would lean towards the Captain as a first pick. Just
Fair, yeah.
Have as many of those as you want. Just a great unit.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. John, sending it over to you. What are you looking at in this pack? I think you might still be on mute, my friend.
I sure am. I'm so sorry. So I'm looking at those same cards Alex just mentioned, as well as Caustic Rain, another good Inscribe card, and Star-Kissed Wings, another good Inscribe card. So like kind of all 4 of those I think are in the running for me. And like I don't know, like I really like Windvoke as well. Free Fire is not my favorite one. And like when I play kind of Windvoke decks, they tend to be more controlling, and in those kind of decks, Free Fire just as a card without the Windvoke tends to not be as good anyway. And you know what card does go great in those 4 faction decks, as well as just any mid-range or aggressive deck, is Calderon Captain. So I think I'm with Alex between those. That would be my Pack 1 Pick 1.
Okay. Now let's see if the rear changes your opinion a little bit. It is Rumba, single swing. This is an 8/8 giant for 6 double praxis. Endurance. When Ramba kills a unit with 2 strength or less, draw a card. Is that enough to pull you off of Captain here?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so for me.
Yeah, it's not enough for me either for pack one pick one. I think when Praxis is open, these Rambas will actually come around. Like I saw Gunner post some picks recently where it was like he got a 9th pick Ramba, and then that kind of took him into Praxis at that point, and then he got an 11th pick Ramba in the same pack or whatever. It's like, yep. If you end up in Praxis, you'll still be super happy to have this captain. Ramba's a good card. It's just like it's kind of hard to cast and doesn't have evasion, so it can be a little awkward trying to close out a game with him. But I would definitely play him if I'm already kind of in Praxis. But yeah, the pack one pick one, I think it's captain for me still.
Nice. Yeah, it makes sense. It's the safest pick, right? He has the highest chance of making a deck one way or another. It's a single influence, and it can come down later versus Ramba being a very heavy commitment and may not be able to play it at all. So yeah, solid. All right, friends, we'll do it for a pack one pick one. Last episode, we kind of went in and did our quote-unquote initial impressions, but not really, just kind of like our first vibes of the format and stuff. So we've been here for a little bit. Typically, the winter set feels like we've been here for a little bit longer because I think it is, but we are getting a new campaign coming down the pipe soon. You can get your pre-order. In fact, I guess since I mentioned it, we might as well just do it now. We are getting a new mini campaign or set, or they haven't said whether there's a story to this one or not, right? Any like gauntlet mode or whatever,
Not
John?
that I'm aware of. I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so we're not sure if you're just
I think not as well. It just says you get your cards. Like I don't think it has one.
Fair enough. So yeah, it's going to be dinosaur themed, which is super cool. So that's exciting. The month's promo is also a dinosaur. So that's kind of cool that they're dabbling into that. It's one of my favorite tirables. Of course, want to just give you a friendly reminder that if you are considering picking up this campaign, you're highly encouraged and incentivized to pick it up directly from the Direwolf store and website, not on your phone or on your computer, but actually going to their website and ordering there, because the money that would typically go to whatever third party that you're ordering from, they instead, since they don't have that cut coming out, they instead give you additional rewards. So very much worth it, to include draft tickets. And I gotta admit, I saw Marvin playing with the new playmat the other day on his stream, and it looks super cool. It's very interactive, so I like that. But
yeah, Totem looked good too.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was talking about. It was the good point. I guess they are different. Very good point. All right, so just to get the conversation cracking here, I think I've got a little game for you guys where Inscribe is a huge mechanic, and we see in this format where people are voting it or taking it, at medium to high level because of the fact that you can run 15 power in your deck, and you have Inscribe that could be power when you need it, and then it could be another playable when you don't need the power. So what I figured is to kind of help people get a gauge, because not all Inscribes are created equal, as I have learned watching both of you guys play. I figured what we'll do is we'll go down the line of the Inscribe cards and state whether you would take them over. I was trying to figure out a good kind of medium, and to me, I feel like a 3/3 for 3, even though they're easy to come by in this format, I think it's a good solid staple as kind of a litmus test. So I think we're gonna do that. We're gonna go and compare each Inscribe card to, let's just say, a 3/3 for 3 that is in your color for your deck. And you guys can let me know whether you would take this Inscribe card over that or not. Obviously, this is very kind of hypothetical because you can come up with a million decisions depending on where you are in the draft. If you need 3s, if you don't, if you need the Inscribes for the splash and whatnot. But I'll let you guys kind of use that as a springboard to kind of mention anything you want about this card. But we are primarily looking at them from Inscribe lens, if you will. So obviously, starting us off, which I think is personally an easy one because I'm not really a big fan of this one, but I could be wrong, is Warning Shot. So starting off with you, John. Warning Shot is Inscribe, 0 fire, deal 1 damage at slow speed or at regular speed. Would you take this over a 3/3 for 3 in your colors?
This game's hard. I mean, it depends, but like let's assume that uh I'm probably of the mindset where I'm just gonna play like 2 or 3 factions or 2 with a splash or something, and maybe we're halfway through the pack, and I have like no units or whatever, right? So I think with those parameters, probably the 3/3 for 3.
Sweet. See, there you go. You got it. All right, Alex. What about you?
Yeah, this game is hard. Like, do I need red Inscribe? Like, it depends. If I have something going already, I would take the 3/3 for 3 generally. If it's the first 3/3 for 3 or the first Inscribe, what's that one called?
Warning
Warning
shot.
shot.
Warning shot. Then I take the warning shot. But say I have some powerful red cards I really want to play, and I'm splashing red, I might take the warning shot over it. But generally, the 3/3 for 3.
So I'll tell you what, I'll make it even easier on you. We'll go through the inscribed cards and you guys tell me which of the ones that you are looking to actively have in your deck. How's that? Did that work?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Because I mean, I feel like Warning Shot is not Inscribe I want to have in my deck personally. Like I just don't feel like it's impactful enough. I'd rather just have a power that comes into play undepleted half the time. Like I get it, obviously, like you still have the ability of getting a spell when you don't need it, etc., etc. But like for example, Draconic Looting I think is a perfect Inscribe card that I'm happy to have because if it's a splash, then I only need 1 influence of it. So later on I can use it early in the game. If it's nowhere near what I need it to be, then it's just power and that's perfectly fine. And then later in the game, you use it to draw cards that can lead you deeper into your deck, which is absolutely fantastic, right? That's the kind of cards I want Inscribe versus Warning Shot. I just feel like it's very situational where you actually make anything off of the 1 damage, right? You're just like, oh wow, they happen to have an X1, or I can finish this flyer off or something like that. But most of the time it's kind of like meh on the front side and then meh on the back side. So I mean, some of the more kind of corner case ones, like we already know Molten Feet, I think is fantastic. Oni Forgesmith. Yeah, all right. So how about that? Oni Forgesmith. Let's talk about that one for a little bit. This is the 6/4 Oni for 6 fire. Inscribe, but then contract 2, draw a weapon from your void and give it double damage. So of course, to me, this one's solid as well, because if it's in your opening hand, you just, use it as power and move on with your day, and drawing it later on, you get a 6/4 where you could play it. But I've definitely seen some conversations on whether to take it for your deck or not because of the fact that it is kind of expensive. Do you have enough weapons for the contract, etc., etc.? So John, is Oni Forgesmith one that you're happy to have, period, or do you think it's situational because of the double fire?
No, it's like a first pickable card even. The earlier you get it, the more you can kind of prioritize some nice weapons. And like, I mean, a 6/4, even if it costs 6, like if your power is like that big of a chonker, that can help you stabilize on 6 when otherwise you would have just drawn a power. Even if you can't do the contract or anything. Yeah, I think it's a card, in any kind of medium pack one pick one, that's probably going to be my pick.
Alex?
Definitely over the 3/3 for 3 if we're still playing that game.
Nah, we've moved on, but way to stay on it though.
Yeah, this card I like more if I have synergies for it. But John's right; it can stabilize. It's like the 6/4 shadow thing. Like if you're using it just as a unit, it's kind of but it works. And if you have synergies with it, then it's great. Yeah, I do like it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, looking at all these, like, really, it's the Warning Shot's the one that I'm just whatever about. Even Jeering Yeti being a 3/2 or 3/1 for 2, perfectly serviceable unit in your deck, and then it's power when you don't need it. So, going into time though, Dismantle. This one I feel like is a little interesting, right? Dismantle is 1 time Inscribe, at fast speed, kill an enemy attachment with cost 4 or less. So, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't hit Starkissed Wings, which is a bit of a bummer. But, I mean, this card, it's a little more niche, but when it hits pretty strong. And then that, to me, feels like you don't mind when you have to inscribe it. There's very little, inscribe, buyer, what is it? Buyer's Remorse, essentially, where we saw with Pledge, where you kind of, some of the best cards had Pledge, and you were like, I don't know. But Dismantle, it's such a niche thing. You'll kind of have an idea whether you want to hit it or not. But yeah, I don't mind. I think this one is a pretty late pick. I've seen plenty of people, including myself, kind of pass on this one. But I actually don't mind having these in my deck at all. I think, and I'm actively trying to have one just because it kind of acts like that pseudo market type card for me. I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
I think I'd almost have any other time inscribe, like the Vow of Silence or the Teleport,
Lost in Thought.
right? The 2-cost one, Teleport for 4 less, or the Cardi B. Those are the time ones I'm looking for. It doesn't really hit a lot of things unless you luckily hit your opponent's like Brigade Hull, which is like amazing. But like you said, it doesn't really hit a lot of stuff. I'd rather have the other ones for power, basically.
Yeah, I'm with Alex. Like, it's a little too narrow for me. It's usually like the first inscribed card that gets cut because, like you said, they go late. I usually have, if I'm playing time, I usually end up with some in my pool whether I wanted them or not. Honestly, I like Warning Shot better.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I think Vow of Silence is great because I mean, if there's one thing we've learned about Eternal is that at least a third of the time, silencing a unit is almost the same as killing it. So I think having free silence in your deck is absolutely amazing.
like the silence one is like, it's like okay. It's also one that, like, if I have 2 or 3 in my pool, it usually gets cut to 1. I think of the interactive time ones, I like Lost in Thought kind of more. Like the silence being fast kind of is nice, but that usually only helps you like mess up combat with like silencing a captain mid combat, or maybe bringing a flyer down to get blocked by a ground unit or something like that. And
Yeah, and you kind of have to have a board presence at that point.
yeah, it's a little niche for that to actually, help, depending on what your opponent's doing, depending on your birth state as well. It's a little less narrow than the one we just talked about, but it's still kind of narrow where I only actively want like one of those in my deck.
Mm-hmm.
If I want a silence effect, there's the silence for 3 slow, draw a card in the draft packs, which that's like kind of a better card. And like, if you don't need the inscribe desperately, I think you'd rather play any number of sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the fast time spell, make the target not do damage and draw a card. Like, I think that's like so much better.
Actually, that's a perfect, man. That's awesome. That's actually a perfect segue that we're gonna talk about. You're talking about Forestall.
Yeah, Forestall is so much better than that as a card.
Yeah, so actually, let's go ahead and talk about it because Pachi was on the stream this past week, and he said that he pretty much never passes this card, and so I wanted to see your guys' opinion of it because I see the value in it for sure. At the very least, it's a cantrip, which is fantastic. So let's go ahead and go into it. Forestall. It is a 3-time fast spell. Prevent all damage an enemy of your choice would deal this turn. So similar to Shackles that we saw in previous formats, but it also has the word descends draw a card tacked on it. It is 3 though, so it's not exactly 1. So sending it back over to you, John, where are you at on Forestalled? I mean, do you think Pachi's a little too high on it as far as never passing one? Are you kind of lukewarm on it? Do you think it's a good contender? What's up?
Yeah, no, I think I see a lot of Pachi around, specifically. Yeah, he's like advocating first picking it like in basically all scenarios, and anytime it's in a pack, he's like, pick that card. I think that's that's way too high on it, honestly. I think there's if you have too many of those in your deck, you're going to end up in situations where all it is like taking maybe even the whole turn off to just draw a card, maybe prevent a little damage, whatever. I think like 2 or 3 in your deck is like the sweet spot in most decks, like maybe 4. But like there's way too much competition for me in that like medium cost spell slot. And then you also have to have the right board state and things like that to really get good value off of it. Like I think like I just said, like 2 or 3 is like the sweet spot for me. And I think if time's open, people just pass these anyway. Like I don't think you need to prioritize them early in the draft to get your copy, unless you're kind of forcing yourself into time.
What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think like taking every single one you see is a little hyperbolic, but it's a very good card. I'm on like, for me, it's 1, the sweet spot. Like I usually cut the second one pretty often because there's so many good cards. Usually, if it doesn't say Inscribe on it, I'll cut it. Or there's so many invoke cards that will take the place of it. So I usually don't play more than 1, but it's because there's just no room for it. But I do like the card a lot.
So the flip side of that card is Bathe in Light, right? Where it does say Inscribe, and it's 6 time. It's a fast spell, gains 6 life. You and your units are invulnerable to damage this turn. So kind of a blanket effect of Forestall. You don't get the card, but you gain the life. Keep sending it back to you, Alex. Where are you at on Bathe in Light? I know it was kind of one of the, oh my god, this card's amazing cards initially in the format. We haven't really talked about it since, so let's go ahead and revisit that card now. Where are you at on Bathing Light?
It's like kind of like a glorified fog, and it is okay because you have Inscribe, but I don't really prioritize it anymore. I've noticed it. Usually, it just delays the opponent's death by a turn. Is what happens. Is what I've noticed with it. I'm not too high on it, but it does have Inscribe, so it makes the deck. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I've been in a couple of board states where once I've identified that they have the Bathing Light, it makes combat very difficult. Where it's like I have to kind of swing all out to get advantage, but obviously knowing that that's sitting there means that it's not necessarily advantage. And then if I can only swing in with 2 things to play around it, they have better blocks, etc. So I mean, it definitely plays out, but I'm sure John's going to talk about it because he's really good about this, but it's almost super easy to identify it because, I mean, you can't always leave up 6 mana or 6 power, inconspicuously. So, John?
You guys have said it pretty well. I think I'm about the same as I was on it when we reviewed it last time. It's like it's an Inscribe card that, like, if I need the Inscribe, I'm probably never cutting that, because it's a nice, I like Inscribes when they have like a big effect like that, because like you kind of mentioned, you just have no qualms with playing it as power. Like you don't even have to hesitate on your earlier turns when you need to hit your power drops. So I like the way that it kind of brings that pain out of the equation. um, and like yeah, it's now that we're late in the format, people see it coming a little more easily. So like it's definitely lost a little value there. And just as a card in your deck, I do think Forestall is probably better in most cases, just because it's cheaper and it cantrips. Um, and usually you just need like the one thing, whether it's their face or the one unit, to not deal damage to have the favorable combat. But yeah, I mean, it has Inscribed. So again, though, like if time is open, people will pass these because it's double time, so it's like not really splashable. So yeah, like I don't prioritize, like maybe I prioritize them a little more than I do now, at the earlier part of the format.
Yeah, it's definitely one that you can get impact for without issue if you've identified the correct lane. So I definitely feel you on that one. Going into Justice. Justice probably has the ones that I'm the most kind of iffy about. Starting off with Mithril Guardian. I personally avoid playing this one, honestly, but once again, going back to my stream, some people are perfectly fine with it. This is an 05 Oni Paladin for 3 Justice, and then Scribe. That's it. So you either get a power or you get an 05. John?
So this making my deck as an Inscribe is dependent on my deck's strategy. If it's like a Huru Flyers deck, it's good. Because the strategy there is to like win in the air while you're clogging up the ground, and this thing is great at clogging up the ground. If it's more of like a Rakano type deck where you're like trying to curve out and you want all of your units to matter, then I'd rather it be like a warning shot. You know, cheap cheap interaction as opposed to a wall. Like you just don't want to play a wall on any turn, let alone your turn 3 with a deck like that. So like I think it's deck dependent whether it makes my deck. And then like if I'm playing, 4-color, 5-color Windvoke pile, uh, it makes those kind of decks a lot too, because it's like the game plan is kind of stall till win cons, and it helps with that. And you just like play way more Inscribes in those kind of decks than just 4 or 5, like in a normal 2 or 2.5 faction deck.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't know, it makes like half of my decks, So it's not I don't always play Durley decks. So it's kind of it's just completely deck dependent, that one.
Gotcha. Alex?
Like even in the deck that goes in, I'm kind of like, I'm not too thrilled about it, but it is a power. It is a 0/5. Like in a controlling deck that has a late game plan, it makes the deck sometimes, about half the time.
All right, I'll take your guys' word for it. Starkist Wings, we obviously know is amazing. Alex, sending it back over to you for Svetya's Decree. This is the 5 double justice Inscribe. Draw cards until you have as many in hand as the enemy player at slow speed.
Like, not so much the one I want to use to splash green, but in a heavy green deck, I'll put it in there, but it does get cut sometimes. I haven't drawn. Actually, I did draw like 6 cards one time because my opponent was stuck on power, but like you're already winning that game anyways, so it wasn't really helpful. But it has Inscribed, so it stays in a lot of decks.
John?
Yeah, that card, like even in games where it looks like it's about to be good, my opponents tend to like do a nicely timed eavesdrop. And then I just have to, it's like it's always you're trying to make it like the last card you play to maximize the card draw and like taking the turn 5 off or whatever. And yeah, you just have to throw it away to an eavesdrop or whatever. It's like, oh, I should have just inscribed that on like turn 2 or whatever. It's like, um, yeah, like the only, like Alex mentioned, the only games where I've ever drawn more than 2 cards or whatever, it was because my opponent was stuck on resources somehow, and it's just straight up win more. So yeah, it's definitely, I think it has less general utility in your average game than Mithril Guardian, honestly. Uh, which is kind of hard for me to say because it's like it it looks like it should be kind of a better card, but it's just the gameplay patterns mean, in my experience, it just really doesn't get there.
Fair enough. And what about finally Rune Sword? +4/+4 Inscribe. It's a relic weapon for 7 justice.
Yeah, I love that one. Like, I mean, I say I love it. It's just because it's like it's one of those where its effect on a board late game on 7. It's usually a 2-for-1, and then like you just never even care about inscribing it early, except for those rare times where you like were doing maybe some war cries or something, and it happened to get a buff, and you just like, oh, I can't inscribe this now. But no, like most of my justice decks, it's like 1 or 2 of those, 1 or 2 Starkist Wings, and like an ideal justice deck for my inscribes.
Yeah, you're not as sad to drop it turn 1 as power, and then if you get it late game, you can like play to make sure you play the power to play it. It helps you get to your double green, like if you're kind of stuck. I like it.
Nice. All right, going into Primal, Ice Over, I think that one's fine. Face Aegis is relevant in a world full of eavesdrop and stun's fine. And Scale Hide, we've talked about that one, kind of come up on a combat trick. Caustic Rain, you mentioned that one earlier. Let's talk about that one. Actually, looking at it, Primal's got really solid, both Primal and Shadow. Let's talk about Caustic Rain a little bit. John, have you found it to be pretty worth your while in this format, or is it just because it says Inscribe with some occasional upside?
I think it's mostly because it says Inscribe. Like there's a lot of board states where deal 2 to all is very relevant. Excuse me. But you have to kind of like you have to build your deck with that in mind if you want to maximize it, or have it maybe not just kill one thing without killing more than one of your own units. Like I tend to play a lot of 2/2s for 2 in a lot of my decks. So honestly, this one, by the time the drafting is done, it can get cut. Like I've played a decent number of games with the Elysia and Rare Trials and Tribulations, and like I've done a lot of weird draft picks to kind of maximize the value of that card. So I don't think I tend to warp my deck around Caustic Rain like that, because it's just like it's not as good as Trials and Tribulations, because that one also buffs your units that survive. So it's like I don't think I make the drafting concessions to make it good usually. So it usually either isn't great when I have it in my deck, or I can cut it. Does that make sense? Like I stop picking up or playing like 2/2s and start playing 1/3s kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with trials and tribs. So like it's one where whether it's good or not completely depends on both your deck construction and like just what cards your opponent has played that game. But yeah, it has Inscribed, so either way it's like fine. But it's not, I don't like it as much as the other ones you just mentioned in a lot of decks. Uh what is it? Ice, not Icy Hold, but uh the one you just mentioned, and
Ice Over and
Ice
Scale
Over.
Hide.
Yeah, and Scale Hide as well. Like those don't really need you to warp your deck for them to be good. What do you think, Alex?
I think I'm like higher on this one. I look at it more as like a board wipe. Like I don't warp my deck around it at all, but I don't mind getting it, because if you have it in your opening hand and you have some things that have 2 toughness, you can kind of lay back, not play them, take a beating for a little bit, and then hopefully wreck your opponent. Um, so I don't mind having one in my deck, and it's very easy to be like, okay, this is not going to help me in this game. It's just power. So yeah, I like it. I think not more than Inscribe, or I mean the Ice Over or the Scale High, but probably about the same as those two.
Fair enough. Snow Peak Eagle is amazing. Jotun Spelljammer is still pretty solid as well. Just the Aegis on it. Even the 4/4 body kind of goes back and forth depending on who you're kind of playing. But I mean, I think it's solid.
It's a lot like the first card we talked about, the Forge Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a little less attack, but the Aegis means like if you try and play it to stabilize, you're not just dead to removal, right? So it's like it's like a reasonable way to help stabilize. And if you're like in Huru or something, it wears weapons well, obviously because the Aegis, so it can actually be like a unit you're happy to have in your deck in those cases.
Yeah, it checks out. That's the worst thing, right? You play beta kind of has that as well with the revenge, right? Not as much as Aegis, but I mean sometimes even better because you can augment it, and then when it comes back, you're like, oh yeah. So, but yeah, I agree. The Aegis on it definitely gives you warm and fuzzy, where you don't feel like you're just gonna play it; it's gonna get wrecked. So
For like a common, it's like something you would play even if it didn't have Inscribe, maybe. So that's like a real good one, I think.
fair. Call the hit. That one's solid. Eavesdrop, yeah, we know it's an eavesdrop format. That's pretty much what we're gonna remember the most about this format. Vermin's Feast, though, this one I feel like is starting to go up in popularity. I've been pretty impressed with it on both sides of the board. Vermin's Feast is a fast spell for 6 double shadow, Inscribe, and then swap the strength and health of one unit with the strength and health of another. Notice how it does not signify your opponent's or your own, so you can do any combination, either both 2 of your opponents, 2 of yours, 1 of your opponents, and 1 of yours. Yeah, the card is pretty darn sweet. John, where are you at on Vermin's Feast?
Yeah, it's very sweet. It can really be a blowout when it lands. Unfortunately, a lot of the times where I end up drafting it, it turns out Shadow's like one of my splash colors. So like, I just have to. I end up having to use it as my Inscribe like way more often than I would like to, because it's a double pip.
Mhm.
So there, there's that kind of downside, I guess, or just it just makes me sad sometimes. I'm like, man, this would have been so good as a spell. I could play this game, but I'm just never getting to this double shadow.
I think if they made it 1 shadow, it'd be way too powerful. Yeah, that's a really good
Mm-hmm.
card, especially if the deck is like a little more shadow than other colors. Then yeah, it could be a complete blowout. And some units get out of hand big in this game, and if you just change it, it's like game over sometimes,
I mean, that's part of the reason why Eavesdrop is so good, right? Because it's only 1 fire to make it happen. So, kind of
The
feels
shadow.
itself. Mm-hmm.
Yep, 1 shadow. You said fire. No big deal.
Oh, my mistake. So yeah, that's Inscribe at the common uncommon level. I guess we probably can talk about some of the rares, but I think let me see. Let me look those up real quick and see if there's like anything too crazy to talk about. I mean, I think at that point, let's see. I mean, Wyatt, Evelina, Bodhi, like, yeah, these are all cards. Spire Loyalist, Hojin. I mean, I guess in a pinch, right? Summary Judgment is probably one of the ones that actually has flexibility. I think the other rares you want to try, you have to be in a real hard spot to inscribe those. But Summary Judgment, inscribe fast speed for justice, kill each unit with 5 strength or more. So I think that one kind of has some flexibility, right? You can hold it in case your opponent may drop like the bigger unit. You don't have anything big. And as soon as you play something that might kill itself, then you can go ahead and just inscribe it. I mean, I don't know. Oh, wow, there actually wasn't that much inscribe at common and uncommon. It's pretty. Let's see. Serpent Hive is busted. Okay, here we go. Only the beginning. All right, John. What about only the beginning? It is a 4 shadow fast spell with Inscribe. Play 3 units from your void that died this turn. Does Inscribe make this good enough to put in the deck, or is it way too situational?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Inscribe exactly makes it good enough to include in your deck. Whether it actually does anything or not, there's so many factors. So a lot of them are
Yeah, I
kind
mean
of
it
not
doesn't
in your
it does
control.
it doesn't say up to 3 units, but it you know if your key card died this turn, you can get it back or whatever. So um yeah, Alex, you got anything about only the beginning? I feel like the rest of these you just put in your deck.
Like often gets inscribed for me when I have it in the deck.
Yeah. I mean, there's Nullify as well, 3 primal fast spell, negate an enemy spell or curse played on the enemy turn. Um, I guess that one's a good insurance policy, right? I think that one's fine.
It's
Early
good.
on, it could be power, and then later on, hey, you got counterspell.
Yeah, it's good. Well, like, I think a little more than half of the Winvokes that people play are going to be on their own turn.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are slow even. So it hits like a lot of those, and then it hits things like Marizen's Legacy, and yeah, no, that one's even maybe gone up since we reviewed it initially. Like, I like it.
And then, uh, I guess the last thing we could do to kind of wrap it up is talk a little bit about debt, maybe some general things. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because it's all situationally dependent, right? Like you don't always debt, but you're probably better off taking in debt to get the extra effect. Um, yeah, I can't really think of any like general rule of thumb to have about it, honestly. Does anything come to mind with you guys? Like I think
Well,
it's
I mean, not really for a general rule, but like just don't feel like you always have to go into debt to play a card with contract, because like I definitely see a lot of my opponents go into debt and it just wrecks them. You know, it's like you just kind of did that to yourself, right? Like
yeah,
even if you
you
didn't have a play in your hand for next turn, like what if you draw something? You know, you need to like before you decide to do it, you need to, you know, weigh
hmm.
the benefit versus the cost, right?
Check
Like
yourself before you wreck yourself.
exactly. Like it's like, you know, you're let's say you're kind of
Leaving up
behind.
the combat trick.
Yeah, well, it's not even like a combat trick. Like even just like drawing and playing like a dorky unit. It's like, will that help me more than playing this warrior monk with contract right now? Even though I don't have like a 3/4/5 drop in hand. Like, what if I draw one? You know,
Hmm.
like will that help me stabilize more than just gaining 5 life this turn? Like, you know, have that conversation with yourself. Um, a lot of people I think don't play to their outs and think about like cards they can draw that'll help them, you know, like they're just like, oh, I have this warrior monk in my hand and I can gain 5 life here. Like that's good, right? So I don't know. You really need to think about what happens if you have to take like literally an entire turn off. And like it's not just that, like as the only card that makes you take a whole turn off. Like quite a few of the contract cards will make you take one or maybe even a partial turn after that off. Like Arachnid Terror is like an insane
Yeah.
contract cost on that one.
Yeah, it's definitely thrown my curve off once or twice, and like you said, for sure in subsequent turns, especially if you draw something right, you're like, okay, I can do this next turn or whatever, and you draw another card, you're like, well, crap.
Like there's some
Um,
cards that you basically always want to contract, like Shaman, for example, but depending on what your opponent's doing and what cards are in your hand and stuff, like maybe that has to be the last card you play. You know, you maybe you could deploy it on 5, but maybe you need to actually wait until turn 7 to do it. You know,
yeah.
maybe you should stabilize a little more first, or you know, hold up the trick or the spell because you feel like your opponent is gonna, you know, do their Winvoke or their Find the Moment next turn, and you need a way to counteract that.
Hmm. No, I think that's solid for sure, and that's I think one of the reasons why everyone's enjoying this format so much is because there's so much depth to the gameplay. There's consistency, a lot less non-games because of Inscribe, and then depth creates um, a lot of interesting gameplay where you're not just playing whatever the best card is in your hand. So, and then there's a little bit of playing around eavesdrop, of course, because everyone has the ability to run that card. Anything to add on debt, Alex?
Well, just like what John was saying, where you don't always have to go into debt. Like, for example, it's a chloric mix and your opponent has one power left up, but it's not colors that they would have a combat trick. Just be smart about, not going into debt for no reason. Or if you're in combat and it's a find the moment, you don't always have to do the +5, like, or wait, yeah, +5 for that one. So yeah, just be careful. You don't always need to go into debt, basically.
Fair enough. All right, guys. I think that's quite a bit. I'm glad the fact that we talked on the two major mechanics of this format. A couple of last minute things before we wrap up the show. Want to give a shout out to the winner of the Last Chance Qualifier Invitational, Dark Revenger, that ended up taking it down. I did not get a chance to watch the games because I was visiting family, but I heard some really good things about the finals and quarterfinals. Or semifinals, correction. So a real quick rundown of who we have going on for the 2021 World Championship is going to be Lights Out Ace, the Boxer Collector, DDDDD, Carnage, Iron Man, Law Warrior, Galeth 88, Dark Revenger, Ronin X, Phoenix, JNL, The Overmaster, I'm Straight, Colosso MA, and Watchwolf 92. So shout out to those guys. Eternal has a small community, but it is a very competitive and skilled based community. So that's a great job that they were able to take down a tournament at some point or another. Shout out to Telemachus for continuously hosting the Tuesday Night Eternal Tournament series, which is absolutely amazing, extremely well ran, and one of the things that keeps the community going. And while I'm giving shout out to the Misplay podcast. Those guys are ending this chapter, unfortunately, but I wanted to give them a shout out. Parmalee, Soap Yellow, and Gato Sujo. They have done an absolute phenomenal job for the last couple of years, throwing out a very high quality program, podcast, and Discord, and as well as some various articles to include the meta breakdown. So shout out to those guys. I do encourage you to give them a listen if you have not already. And last bit of news, we have the Scion Draft coming back this weekend, which I am super excited about. One of my favorite ways to play Eternal. This is the Valley Beyond Scion Draft. What this means is the Valley Beyond is the name of the campaign that we talked about at the beginning of the show that is coming out shortly. So Direwolf has already added a handful of the cards from this campaign into this Scion Draft. So you'll be able to do kind of a pseudo preview event. This is going on this weekend and this weekend only, unfortunately. So from the 28th to the 1st of February. Same thing. You'll be opening 4 packs. You'll be drafting 45 card decks. These are phantom drafts. What this means is that all the busted cards that you are drafting are not going to be are added to your collection, but you are going to get some rewards for each run you do, to include a promo art Searing Fist. And I gotta admit, you guys have heard me talk about it several times on this show. I think it's great that they do alternate art. I have typically not been a big fan of them for some reason, but I gotta admit, the Searing Fist looks like a rock golem, a magma golem about to punch someone's lights out, and it looks absolutely amazing. So I'm probably going to try to get my premium sets of those. But that is one of the rewards. It's going to be 4,000 gold or 300 gems to enter. So, of course, you're getting a discount on that stuff because of the fact that it is a phantom draft. Let me see the rewards, actually. Let's go find out the rewards real quick to see. And yeah, it actually looks like it is... it's actually better rewards. It's the same. I'm sorry. It's the same rewards as what we see each run. They have a leaderboards, but obviously for these events, that leaderboard doesn't really matter. As far as the rewards for your run, you get 3 packs regardless. So just for signing up, you're going to get 3 packs of Cold Hunt. And then you get going from 0 all the way up. It's an alternate art, 500 gold plus an alt art. You get alt art all the way up. 1250, 2500, 4000 for 4 wins. So 4 wins gets you a free draft for this event, and you start to get the premium art of the Searing Fist. 55 gold, 5500, 6500, and then finally 7000 gold. So super excited. I'm going to be jamming some games, so I definitely encourage you guys to do as well if you haven't. Even if you're not a limited person, Scion drafting is a fun way to be able to play some of those super powerful cards that didn't quite break the meta in Standard or in Constructed in some fun ways. So yeah, that will do it. Good job, guys. I think it was a lot of fun. Always a great time talking draft with you guys. I'm enjoying it. We may have to dial on some more constructed stuff if another podcast is closing its doors, so to speak. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Thank you so much, guys.
So Scion drafting is going to be amazing. I can't wait for that. Like, we don't have the card list yet or anything, so I don't, I can't really give any strategic advice for this particular format, but I do encourage you guys to tune into like Jedi's stream Saturday and Sunday afternoon, asking questions if you're a little unsure or curious about how it goes down, and maybe that'll ease any of those fears or whatever you might have to dive right in. Like, I think the barrier to entry is lower than ever, and like you actually get gold back for these now instead of just straight up burning gold. Like the these reward changes to Scion Draft are amazing. Like, I'm so excited.
Yeah,
It's
that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I encourage people to try it for sure, even if you're not into the alt art. I think it's just going to be fun. Um, and like you mentioned at the start of the show, Jedi, our last show, I want to revisit how that deck did.
Oh
Um,
man, that's right. Yeah. By all means, shoot. Thanks for reminding me. I
yeah,
had it, and then I my bad. Too many
that's cool.
announcements.
Yeah, so just in case people are curious how that, it was like, I think it was like a medium to medium plus kind of overall deck, right? We decided at the end of it, it was like three factions, basically two with a splash. It was kind of like a heavy splash, but it's still a splash, I think. Had some powerful cards, and some good synergy, and yeah, it went 7-1. So it ended up being a 7-win deck, and it was fun. The games were fun. It was a good deck.
That's what happens when John pilots it. You just end up smashing face.
I feel like I was trying extra hard too, just because it was like our podcast draft. So sorry to whoever I played, but
A
had to get
good
those
player
wins.
is good.
Fair. Shoot. If the one thing I will say, I guess, just to throw out a little bit, you can definitely. We've done previous primers for Scion drafting, so if you want to go back and listen to those or the cube drafts, that kind of gives you a step in the right direction. In my experience, Direwolf has kind of steered away from any aggro decks in these Scion drafts. They've kind of really dabbled in the power plays of the larger cards. Not to say that you can't ignore your curve. You definitely need to have a curve, but there typically has not been my curve stops at 3 kind of aggro decks that you can punish the really greedy decks so far. And maybe that's why they don't put the decks in there to make it a little more user friendly. But so you can expect that, but once again, without seeing the actual cube list, we have no idea what the theme and the design archetypes are going to be. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. Obviously, the way the podcast scheduling works, we're really not going to be able to kind of break it down for you guys at all, just because once again, by the time we do this one, the event's already going to be over, and who knows what the next Scion draft's going to look like. So take it for what it is. I will say this though, of course, if you want to encourage Direwolf to do Scion drafts more often, then kind of put your money where your mouth is, queue up, let them see that people are spending gold and gems on these Scion drafts, and then that way, that's one of the ways that they know that they're it's something that the community wants to see. So that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Good night.
Good luck in your Scion draft queues, everybody.